So as Lindsay said, we're going to be going through some social media stuff and the social media competition. We've actually taken this as a wider piece on social media. So how to use it effectively, what to do, what not to do, and then also to look at the social media competition and how to effectively get the most out of your content for social media. So just to recap on what Lindsay said, the social media competition really is looking at stories from the membership base, but also beyond the membership base, so across the social housing sector, looking for stories of work that social housing providers have done to help people into work, and through that journey, progressing them into work with the support that they provide. Now, the main way of entering that competition is through Twitter and LinkedIn. On Twitter, the competition entry portal is just using the hashtag communities at work, and also tagging in GUAC via their Twitter handle, which is @GUACjobs. And the only requirement is that the submission shares a story of a resident's journey into work, or wider work that housing association does to help people into work, and the service that you provide, and focusing on kind of on the outcomes and the support given. Briefly, I just want to recap on social media platforms. For people listening into this, you may be really well versed in social media platforms, and you may know what is best to use, or you may not really work on it as much as people like myself do. So just to pick out a few of these, so Twitter is a brilliant platform for engaging with sectors, so business to business and trade. So for the social housing sector, they are really engaged on Twitter, and it's a great platform for organisations like members of GUAC to reach out to the wider sector and talk about the work that they do. It's also really good from a consumer perspective. So your residents are likely to be active on it, and your wider communities that you act in are likely to be active on it. So that's why you tend to see a lot of your own housing associations, but also wider businesses are active on Twitter for that reason, because it brings together business and it brings together people really effectively. And that's one of the most powerful platforms really at the moment for businesses for engagement and for social housing providers. You've also got LinkedIn, which is really powerful for just connecting and just talking to business leaders and the business to business side of it. So when you're talking to peers and colleagues within the sector, but peers and colleagues that are within your own organisation, that is a really powerful platform. Unsurprisingly, it's not used for consumer engagement or community engagement or resident engagement. It's not an avenue for that. Facebook, on the other end of that, is a great platform for reaching out to communities and residents, but it's not so great for B2B, business to business. So you wouldn't tend to engage with the wider housing sector on Facebook. It tends to be used by housing associations. Facebook tends to be used by housing associations to reach out to tenants. So you have lots of tenant-facing groups on there, and updating them on community events, and doing much more community-friendly updates on that. Instagram and Snapchat tend not to be used that much by housing associations. Instagram is a product and a lifestyle-based platform, so it's really good for photos and photo sharing. It tends to be used by people that are selling products. So if you're a private house builder, or perhaps if you have a sales arm within your housing association, they might use Instagram because it communicates products and lifestyle. But corporately and for community investment, it doesn't tend to get used that much. Snapchat's quite interesting. That's that yellow one with a ghost-looking symbol. Snapchat is being used more and more actually at the moment, and it does tend to be. The main audience for it tends to be youth, young people, and young people obviously within communities and in young groups of people. So for that reason, housing associations are starting to use it a bit more. I've seen some really great examples and community investment teams using Snapchat really well, and just talking about using it to highlight events that they're doing, or highlight events that are live and that are happening. It's really good for. Top left, you've got the YouTube icon. I tend to see YouTube as not as a social media platform, but it's something that you can play videos from and link to on other channels. Some people see it as a platform itself because especially younger people today tend to go onto YouTube directly to watch videos. But actually for me in the work that I do, YouTube is a platform that I link to via Twitter, via LinkedIn, and via other platforms that I'm using. But it's always useful to remember that it's there, and it's a great way of sharing content. And actually, in the context of the social media competition, lots of people are submitting videos. Some of those are short vox pops, some of those are longer videos. Where they're longer videos, they're tending to host them on YouTube and sharing them on Twitter. So getting the most out of engagement and getting the most out of social media, there's 5 or 6 key things really to keep in mind. First is audience, and making sure that really your audience, the people that you're trying to target and you're trying to get your information across to, are firstly there. So firstly, that you've picked the right channel and your audience are on that channel. So to give you an example, if you're trying to reach out to your tenants, you wouldn't post on LinkedIn. If you're trying to reach out to the sector, you wouldn't post on Facebook. So making sure that you're using the channel appropriately, you've got your audience in mind, and you know that those two things are marrying up. Visuals. So by its nature, social media is really engaging and very visually engaging. Text, heavy amount of text doesn't really work so well on social media. So writing paragraphs and certainly writing essays and streams of written content isn't what social media is for. Twitter, you've only got 280 characters that you can use in any one space. So you're already limited by what you can write. And same on Instagram and same on Facebook. To a certain extent, you can obviously post far longer posts on Facebook and on LinkedIn, but actually your engagement drops off after a certain point. So using visual content, that means using videos, using GIFs, which are usually humorous and lighthearted, short snapshot videos that kind of convey an emotion or a feeling through a comedy-esque video. And then the story, keeping your story in mind, making sure that you know what your story is, and making sure that you understand what you're trying to get across. Hashtags, especially true for Twitter, making sure that when you're doing content that you tag your content into the correct hashtag. For the UK housing sector, this UK housing hashtag is the best hashtag to be using. You should also be using, in the context of the competition, hashtag communities that work, and making sure that you're tagging in the appropriate audience to that. And then tagging. So there are 2 ways to tag. You can tag in your stream of tweet. So you can tag at GUAC jobs, for instance, or you can also tag them into the photo. So if you're posting an image, tagging the person that you want to draw attention to via the image, it's actually a much more subtle way of doing it, and you don't lose your space that's dedicated out of that 280 characters limit that you have on Twitter. Issues management and things to avoid. So some people and organisations get nervous when venturing onto social media because you can have negative interactions, you can have negative comments, and it's can be quite hard to contain. So things to remember, use of language and grammar is a really obvious point, making sure that this is in part making sure that your spelling and grammar is correct, obviously, but also making sure that your language and grammar is appropriate to the use of the platform you're on. So if you're posting on LinkedIn, as it's a B2B corporate platform, your language should be slightly more formal. You can use longer sentences. Don't go too formal because social media doesn't really play well with formal language. But if you're dealing on Twitter, it's a much more informal platform, making sure that your language is positive, it's upbeat, it's reflective of the platform you're on. And again, bad language and bad grammar as a rule just tends to annoy everyone, and you get grammar and language police out there. So you'll probably get a response if you do make errors. Sensitive data and photos of real events. So obviously this is where you're doing events and trying to showcase that on Twitter. Just being mindful of the photos that you're taking and sharing. Obviously, if you've got children, there's an issue there and you have to get consent forms. But actually, as a rule, if you're taking photos of an event, get a consent form for everyone that's involved in it. You don't want to be accused of sharing content that you shouldn't have been sharing. And as it sits on social media, it sits there for years, and somebody can come back years later and say that they didn't want to be photographed in 2008 and you shared your content in 2008. So just get get consent forms, and have signs around your venue and event saying that you may have you have a photographer there and you may be sharing your photos online. Don't use it as a platform to push a singular issue. By that, I mean, keep your content varied. So GUAC, for instance, has a wide range, has one campaign, but it has a wide range of issues that it fights, and it has a wide range of key messages. Although it's a single issue campaign, the key messages are varied. The ways of getting involved vary, so our content on GUAC tends to be varied to reflect that. So we don't, for instance, just say, sign up to the webinar. That's not the only content that gets pushed out every day, every week. The content has to be varied. If your content isn't varied and if you're being seen to push one content and one issue, you'll lose engagement, people will switch off. And they also feel that it's kind of being pushed at them quite aggressively. So just make sure you keep it varied and keep it light. Not all engagement is good engagement. So if you've got 50 likes, this is quite obvious in part, if you've got 50 likes, 30 retweets, it's not necessarily a good thing. So don't measure success on the number of engagement, measure success on positive engagement for positive posts. So just being mindful that if you get negative interactions and negative feedback online, lots of people are seeing that, and it doesn't mean that because you've had lots of interactions that's been a positive thing. And one way to manage social media issues is to have a social media protocol. So then in that protocol, you set out behavior that you accept from your engagers and your followers and things that you don't accept. Publish that protocol on your own website, link to it on your on your Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter landing page. And then if you do have issues and abuse, then you can refer people to that, and you have license to block. You obviously have license to block anyway, but it means that you can then start to show people how you expect behavior and the limits of the behavior that you accept. And if there are instances of bad behavior and engagement with you, you can politely point people to your protocol as a first warning, and then take a more drastic action of blocking if they continue. So wanted to focus on how to do good engagement and how to, in the spirit of the Communities at Work campaign, how you can start to think about the engagement that you and your organisation could do to not just give good content for the campaign, but also to give good content to represent the work that you do. And one of the best campaigns that's happened in the last few years has been this NHS Give Blood campaign. They essentially took quite a complex issue, and which was about blood donation, and they were trying to reach out to people with ethnic backgrounds to get increased blood donations, and they had to, in the spirit of that, explain why, but also lead to an aim, which was to have increased blood donations. And it was really complex, it's really sensitive, and they managed it exceptionally well. And they used threads. A thread is when you reply to your own tweet, and when you link into the first tweet, the story then unfolds. And I recommend this if you want to break down a lot of content, especially in the context of the competition. But if you want to break down content and tell a story over a series of threads, and get around the 280 character limit, then this is the way to go. I'll try and link in and show you it and how it works. Hopefully this still works. Oh. No, I think that's still working.
It's just a blank screen at the moment, Jenny, but it looks like it's trying to do something.
Yeah. Can you see now?
No, it's just gone to a cursor, actually.
Okay.
You're trying to link to Twitter?
Yeah, but
got it.
Yeah?
Yeah, can see Twitter on your screen.
Cool.
And Give Blood, obviously, you've got that feed.
Yeah, so you can see Twitter page.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So here, they've obviously pinned this tweet to their homepage, which means that when you go into their homepage, it's the first thing you see. Now, if you click on that tweet, you see the whole thread unpacks. Right. They're trying to tell the story. So people keep asking, why do we need more black donors? Isn't everyone's blood the same? You're racist. It's a thread. And then it streams into a whole story and they break down through their key messages and stories about why this is an issue and what people need to do and how they can get involved in it. And it's scroll through this campaign won a few awards subsequently for it. They posed the question and the challenge up front. They're using GIFs here to kind of to do engagement, and throughout, actually, they use GIFs throughout. So first up, blood's the same for everyone, in everyone's body. It keeps you alive and saves lives. And this is just, again, key messages. However, everyone's blood is not the same, so you can stop calling us racist. And then it breaks down through their key messages. It's really complex and actually quite scientific, and not usually consumer or interesting facing for most people. And it goes through it, and I won't read each one out, but the amount of engagement, you can see from all of these how many likes they've had, how many retweets, how many comments, how many engages. And the whole story continues like that throughout use of GIFs and engagement. And actually, it shows that there are alternatives way of presenting this. They could have done a video that explained all of the information. They could have done a fact sheet. They could have done infographics. But actually, they kept it really simple. And this is hugely low cost. It's just the content's already there. The GIFs already exist on Twitter, and they've broken it down. And it's this was done in 2019. So you can see it was well over a year ago, and they've measured the impact of this campaign and the rise in bloods they've had, and overwhelmingly they've had increased the numbers and far exceeded the objectives of their own campaign, which is brilliant. So that's just a good example of sharing content on social media and how it can be done quite effectively. I'll just turn to my presentation, if I can get back to it after that.
I'll let you know. Doesn't like that. It's nice to see this campaign, just like you say, how sort of cost effective it is. Really, it's so simple. You know, they haven't bought new material. They haven't. Oh, there you are. They haven't invested massively in new films or anything. It's really good.
No, exactly. And it's just a good reminder that actually you can get creative, and you can be brave, and you can talk about content that you might feel that is difficult to talk about, controversial, but actually if you handle it in the right way, in the way that has been done, then it's a great thing to be doing. So can you see my presentation again?
Yeah, we're back to the screen where you left off about here's how it's done well. Tips.
The final thing now to talk about is just to bring you back to the Communities at Work competition, and what you can start to do and keep in mind. So obviously you have to use the Communities at Work hashtag, and at the same time you have to use the GUAC jobs handle, please. Make sure you're tagging it in. Keep it human and keep it positive. This should be obvious, but actually you'd be surprised about when you get into it how often people don't keep it human and don't keep it positive. So make sure that the story is about it's focused on the person, it's focused on the outcomes that you do, but it's also focused on the real impact and the human impact that your investment and your time and the work that you do has done to transform somebody's life. Emotive is great. Keeping something emotive and keeping someone engaged through that story is brilliant. Now, video does work best, but I appreciate that not all of you are going to have either the luxury of having time to do video, or the luxury of time to go out there and film the people that you want to film, or the schemes that you want to film, so you might not be able to rely on that. That doesn't matter, there are other ways around it. Using photographs are brilliant. Please just keep it visual if you can. Photographs of the scheme, photographs of the person that you've helped into work, and be tagging them in. I'll point here about how to break down longer content. You've just seen that thread example from the Give Blood campaign. Threads are brilliant because it means that you're keeping your content going, but it means that you get to have your story play out as well over a few different posts. And it means that when we link into the first thread, they all unpack and we'll be able to see them all. Do link, if you have a case study if you have words and you can write something up about your competition entry, post it on your website, post it as a case study, link through it to share that wider content from your Twitter account. So have a tweet that has a photo, a bit about the story, and then link into the wider content that's available on your website, for instance. But find a way to share the content, because obviously, although you're limited, especially on Twitter, to those limited number of characters, we want to hear the wider story, so make sure you're telling that wider story. More than one entry is okay, obviously, for the sake of GUAC really wants to hear more stories that you've got, so certainly do more than one entry, but don't spam the same entry multiple times. Your entry will be picked up, it will be logged, so you don't need to keep spamming it. And that's it. And before I continue to get more emails, I'll end that. I'm quite surprised about how few emails popped up there.
No, it was pretty clear actually what you were going through there. That's fine. And thanks for showing us that Twitter campaign as well. That's I hadn't seen that one, and it's really quite thought-provoking. Just a quick reminder then, we had I just had an email actually as we were talking through this webinar from Optivo, just asking again about the Comms Toolkit, which is coming out. And I've just replied to say that will be in the next week or two. Is that about right, Jenny?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got the Comms Toolkit coming, then we've got the Comms Summit, then we've got Communities at Work Week, so that's fine. I just wondered on your presentation, would you, two questions really, and I'll just check the chat box as well. No, that's fine. I just wanted to check whether you think it's actually a good idea. Would you recommend using Snapchat? I
think it depends.
Yeah.
It's not a corporate, again, it goes back to audience, it goes back to who you're trying to engage.
Yeah.
I've seen it done well for community investment events and groups.
Yes.
But it's not something that engages more widely, and you've got to be quite careful with it. But yeah, I think my rule with social media is do trial and error on platform, don't trial and error on message. So it doesn't matter if you try something, as long as your messages are safe and you would do that same message on a different platform. It doesn't matter if you go into a platform and it doesn't work. It's nothing lost at all. So do trial and error platform, but not trial and error
message. That's good. The reason I ask is we are going to launch an APPG inquiry in the coming months, and it will probably run through the rest of this year, possibly into early next year. And it's got some key questions too, really, around issues of unemployment in social housing, and also issues of persistent low pay for social housing tenants and residents. Trying to unpack some of those issues. And one of the things our parliamentarians are asking us to do, quite rightly, is reach out to individuals, families, tenancies, and get their perspective. And we know that we can do that through sort of existing channels, but we're also looking at ways to reach typically unreached groups of people, so people who don't tend to go to tenant scrutiny panels or neighbourhood meetings, or those kinds of open door events that so many of our members do. And we're looking at different ways of doing that. One is using kind of consumer market research type companies and tools, so reaching very particular people. And another is looking at social media as a way of reaching people who might look at Snapchat or be engaged in something and be able to give some really quick thoughts and views, but who would never in a million years come to a round table discussion hosted by their housing association, So just wondering, I suppose I just want to plant the thought really of ways in which we might branch off elements of that inquiry and reach those audiences. So just a thought. Okay. And my other question was social media protocols.
Yeah.
Do you have any good examples of company social media protocols, or is that just something that we should, I'm wondering whether we should try and bring that into the toolkit, or whether we should just say, keep an eye, check with your comms team if you have a social media protocol.
I wouldn't really worry about it too much. I
No,
think
okay.
social media teams should already have that sorted, and it's not the people that you're engaging with as GUAC our sector, and it's not really something that you need to worry about. You could have one, but certainly sharing that, I wouldn't worry unless, I wouldn't worry about sharing that in the toolkit.
Right, okay, fine. All right, so it's not a particularly complicated thing to get concerned about.
No.
All righty. Well, I'm just doing final check on the chat box. Looks like everyone is quiet and maybe numbed by Brexit. Who knows? But thanks for joining us. If you could join us, had a couple of messages from people who were going to join who are going to watch the recording instead because they couldn't make it. So that's all cool, and that will go out in the next week. So all we can say then really is thank you for joining us. Thanks, Jenny, for that overview. Look forward to, we'll share the broadcast as soon as we've got it packaged up. And really, I suppose the key message for our members now is look out for the Comms Toolkit coming your way, coming to an inbox near you in a week or two's time. Yeah? Fab. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye.